But what about small business? How are they uh, figuring into all this? Let's talk to Bruce de Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Bruce, thanks for being with us. How are you?
I'm great. Nice to meet you both. How are you?
Very nice to meet you as well. We're good. So, I don't think on a normal everyday basis, we don't think about small business enough, right? I mean, Manchester Road here in St. Louis, out in West County, where I live, there are so many vacant buildings that used to be businesses that used to thrive, and now all of a sudden they're gone. I mean, is that just a Missouri, St. Louis thing, or is that happening around the country?
Oh, it's happening all over the country, and it's alarming. The house is on fire, and here's why. We are a small business nation. We 99.9% of all businesses, Vic and Kenny, are small businesses. 1/10 of 1% of American companies are big businesses.
Wow.
Unfortunately, they include the big media companies. So 24/7 on most outlets, you hear and see and think about and are shown the actions, the activities of the giant corporations, and that allows Washington to serve 1/10 of 1% of the biggest businesses in America far more than it does the rest of us, the 35 million businesses in America that are small businesses. That's the foundation and the lens through which we look at everything.
And out of the people, I already forgot, my dementia's sinking in here. I already missed the percentage of what you said are small businesses, but out of that, how much are owned and run by women?
Women own 40% of all businesses in America. And we've got a Don't Cheat Women project, don'tcheatwomen.com, that explains why women businesses ought to be given more than just 5% of the federal contracting budget. Half the population, 40% of the businesses, they own 14 million businesses. They generate almost 3 trillion in revenue. They employ over 12 million people. They sell what the government buys. But the law says they're supposed to get only 5% of federal contract dollars every year. And in reality, they probably get around 1 or 2%.
Well, there was a Chrysler plant. How far is Fenton from here, Ken? Maybe 15 miles at best.
Maybe 20.
Maybe 20 miles from the city. And when that closed down, I learned this when it happened, that for every job lost at a corporation like that, 4 jobs are lost in the small businesses in the surrounding communities. And that's just devastating to small business.
Yeah, yeah. And no administration for decades has well served America's small businesses. They pretend to. They make big press releases and announcements about lots and lots of tweaks or new programs at the SBA, particularly about loans. Well, only 1 to 2% of our small businesses ever get an SBA backed loan.
Hmm.
And only 0.2% of small businesses get federal contracts. When there's about 3 million businesses in America could apply for federal contracts, which is part of the annual procurement budget steered toward goods and services of $800 billion that the federal government buys. It's the world's largest purchaser of goods and services. So, we want to talk about the shutdown, but I want to conclude by the point I'm leading to, which is simply, if the federal government steered the 23% of its budget to small businesses, it would create millions of new jobs, just the way the Small Business Act intended in 1953. And every congressman, senator, and candidate for the midterms next year, we're trying to reach out to them and tell them this, because when enough people get behind it, it's economic prosperity, no new taxes, no new spending. They're codified in the law. If we could just make the federal government not work for the 1/10 of 1% of companies that are big business.
They're locked in, man. Unfortunately, they're locked in. We're talking to Bruce de Torres, who is the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League and the Don't Cheat Women Project. So I went to the website, American Small Business League, and there's a drop-down menu on top, and one of them says, Dear 2026 House and Senate candidates. And then there's some real issues, some of which we're talking about right here, that 40% of businesses are owned by women, and they get 5% of federal contracts, like you say. So, how do we get this page specifically on your website in front of people who are running for House and Senate seats?
Thank you. I want to come over and mow your lawn and fold your laundry just for mentioning that.
Got it. Got it.
We're reaching out to every member of the House and Senate Small Business Committees, every member of the Senate, and every member of the House. 1,300 candidates for the midterms that we found, and writing them and teaching them these very, very issues, because women can tip the election, and they will get behind the candidates for the Senate, the House, who say, I want economic fairness for women, so that when they get a fair amount of federal contracts, you tell me what it should be, 15%. We're asking for 15%, not 5%. They're 40% of their businesses. Should it be 40% of the contracts? Let's debate that. But let's get started by leaning on everyone who could make a difference to want economic fairness for women so they could compete for those contracts. Don't just hand it to them, make them compete like everybody else. Because what's at stake is their political equality. Because men earn and save more than women, they donate more to politicians, they have more influence at that level. It's easier for them to run for office. Men hold about 75% of every seat in the Senate, in the House, all state legislatures, almost that many governor chairs, and 90% of committee chair and party leadership positions. And women have different political priorities. They are half the human race, half the heart and soul of humanity, and they need to be heard and participate and have the same impact as men politically to balance out our humanity, our vision for the future, and our care and nurturing of our children and our elderly parents. So there's a lot riding on just this particular little foot in the door. Let's get them a fair amount of federal contracts.
Hey, Bruce, I just wanted to ask you again about, because we have the shutdown right now and you have the small business, men and women. Can you tell us, is the shutdown good that the Republicans are not coalescing behind the Democrats?
Shutdown's not good. So whatever could resolve it would be good.
Yeah,
but the issues at stake that are causing the gridlock, please, everybody, go into a back room and figure it out. But, put a sign on the wall that reminds you, the American people, that's who we're trying to serve. So that's the short answer about the shutdown.
So every election, every single election, they talk about the women vote, right? The suburban women vote, which one's voting for Trump, which ones aren't. So much so that you would think that especially women congressmen and senators would be using a megaphone to talk about women owned businesses. But I never hear it, and never heard it before I talked to you, honestly.
You hit the nail on the head there. And it's a measure of how the folks in Washington are captured by corporate power and the giant donors who contribute to their campaigns, and how the media, like we said earlier, really works for the 0.1% of these big businesses that love things just the way they are and would love us fighting about everything else under the sun and take our eye off the economic ball. For the last 2 days, I've been thinking the best thing about the shutdown is if it does pinches us economically, there should be a big and loud and fast howl to resolve it, because most are resolved in 2 or 3 days. Sometimes they go for a week or two. 2019, it went for 35 days, and that is so painful. I almost said effing painful. So there. So that to alert us to the distraction that so much of news and politics is. Frank Zappa, musician, 1980s, said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex, meaning the momentum rolls right along. Old Man River just keeps rolling along with the giant companies getting the giant contracts, mostly in service to the Pentagon. And that's a whole other ball of wax to evaluate. Are we really doing all we could for peace in the world? Do we want peace in the world? Do we want to scale down? There was there's an old tradition, gone with the wind, of pursuing not only peace, but disarmament. That evaporated when they took out John F. Kennedy in 1963. Wow. And I'm an amateur historian, because you have to go back to the founders and the ideals. What are we supposed to be? what did we do during the periods of our greatest prosperity? And then you see Eisenhower's 1961 warning about the military-industrial complex fulfilled. I say, we're not America, since the USA Patriot Act and Department of Homeland Security eviscerated so many of our constitutional rights. We don't live under the Constitution. We are not America. America is to be created by people talking about and caring about these things.
You know, as you were saying it, I started writing peace and prosperity, because you always hear those two words together, right? When you have peace, a lot easier for prosperity. And Ken, I want you to know Bruce is the first guest we've had on this show to bring up Frank Zappa. So now I got to come mow your lawn and do your laundry, Bruce.
I'll take it.
All right. Tell us a little bit about the American Small Business League website, would you?
Certainly. Thank you. ASBL.com. The facts, figures, and our long fights expose the fact that the vast majority of federal contracts go to big businesses, even though the SBA tells us otherwise every single year. ASBL.com. And that letter to candidates raising the issue of contracts and the contracts, the fair amount that ought to go to women in our project. Don'tCheatWomen.com.
Right. Don't cheat women. Bruce, thanks so much for being with us. Let's talk again when we get some peace and prosperity, okay?
I would love to. Hopefully sooner than that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I see what you're saying. No end in sight.
Right.
All right. Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bruce.
Thank you both.
You got it. The Torres from ASBL.com.
And
right.
Don'tCheatWomen.com.
Yes. Don't cheat the women.